I am over the moon that we are joined by our very own Grace Victory today. Welcome, Grace. It's so lovely to see your face.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, you have been our columnist now for years.
I know.
And the last time I spoke to you was actually when you had just been announced as our columnist,
Yeah.
and so much has happened since then.
Yes. When was that?
I think that was at the end of 2019.
Yeah, I think so. A long time ago.
Yeah, I remember it really distinctly. I remember where we were and all the chat. But for anyone who's listening or watching and they haven't heard from you before, can you introduce yourself in your own words?
Yes. I am Grace Victory. I am a blogger or content creator, mother, survivor, author, and I basically have spent the last 11 years, 12 years
Wow.
on the internet. So I'm like an OG YouTuber. And as the years have gone on, I've kind of changed platforms and done books, etc., and TV shows. So my career has taken me down, different paths. But yeah, I've been in the game a long time.
You have, and there's been lots of changes. And you mentioned YouTube, and you're now doing the Familyhood, which we'll get onto later on, which is fantastic. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today, Grace, was about what's happening with you and the future, and in no way to diminish what you've been through over the last 18 months. You wrote a beautiful article for us about the girl who lived for Happiful. So people can go across and they can read that, or they can come to your channel. But really, I wanted you to have the opportunity to talk about how things are for you today. How are you doing?
So I always find when I come onto the Happiful podcast, you always catch me on a day where I'm not the greatest. I think there's a theme in that. I don't know why. It's maybe a podcast for Happiful is my safe space. I don't know. But I'm good, but going through it. I'm not going to lie. So I, obviously, for those that don't know, I caught COVID whilst pregnant with my beautiful baby boy, Cyprus, and ended up in a coma for 3 months. Had to learn to walk again, to talk, to eat. It was a whole thing. And that was in December 2020. And then in April 2021 is when I started therapy again. Obviously, I was too ill before and I couldn't speak. So as soon as I was able to, I called my therapist, like, I am in crisis, I need you. So I've been having sessions again twice a week. I've been in therapy for years, but we've got to a point where there's just so much to talk about and work through, and not even about being ill or catching COVID. It's more about my identity now that I'm a mum, now that I've gone through this massive trauma and my friendships have changed, my spirituality has changed, my beliefs have changed, my perspectives have changed. And I think before all of this happened, I really believed I was quite a fluid person, but actually I was quite rigid with my beliefs. So this massive trauma basically just shat on all that I thought I knew. So now I'm having sort of like a fragmented outlook on life, and I feel really displaced within my soul. And it's a really hard place to be when you've still got to be a mum, still got to work, still got to carry on. It sometimes feels like when you're breaking, you just don't have the time to be broken. So like, I'm fine, I'm managing, I'm coping, I'm not in crisis, but there's a lot of stuff brewing under the surface, basically.
That's a lot. And like you said, before we started the podcast today, you said Cyprus, when he wakes up, he's on, he's, and he's beautiful, but he's on. So you don't have that time and space to kind of process that on your own, I guess. And that's a lot. Are you finding that the therapy is supporting you? I mean, one of the things about therapy, I don't know about you, but it is kind of like you dredge it all up, don't you? And then the rest of the week you kind of process it and you go back into therapy. And
that's exactly how it feels for me. And I think a lot of people that maybe have CBT therapy or therapy that doesn't really go into your trauma and sort of touches the surface, it makes them feel better. They love therapy, they go in, they learn, they're empowered. But when you have trauma therapy, you don't feel better. And that's one thing that I want people to realize, is that sometimes therapy isn't empowering, it's not inspiring. You don't leave feeling better. You sometimes leave feeling worse, and like the plaster's been ripped off the wound. And that's where I'm at. I feel like I'm really naked and vulnerable whilst still trying to be a really good mum and show up for myself and look after myself. And finding that balance can be really, really, really tough. I don't know how single parents do it. Like, my mum raised me and my sister, and it's just hard. It's so hard. And being a parent is so beautiful and magical. But I think I'd be lying if I said that it was easy or every day was incredible, because sometimes you do just have to get through that day and just survive. But I know that with time and like compassion and patience, things do get easier. But it's a lot. I think just adjusting to motherhood, but also adjusting to kind of what I've been through and like my childhood. Everyone's got their stuff. My stuff just feels really big at the moment.
Of course it will feel really big. And I can't tell you how much I can imagine that people will be listening to this when you talk about motherhood and saying, I feel that way too. And not having the experience that you've had, and also coming into motherhood in the way that you did. So it's understandable that it feels so big for you now, and you need that time and space to process it. And also becoming a mother, I would imagine, changes your relationship to your own thoughts about motherhood or your own childhood, because suddenly you're in the position of mothering. So you have other thoughts about, you must shift, your mind must shift in that way.
Yeah, I just think there's all these different strands, isn't there, of being a human being, being a woman, being self-employed, being plus size, being mixed race, being a mum, being a survivor. There's all these different hats that we wear and that I wear. And I'm still learning how to navigate those hats and integrate them into like one person. No one teaches you this stuff. No one tells you how to do that. Even therapy, it's just the process of going through each session. And I just hope one day I wake up and I'm like, I'm there, because it's a lot. It's a lot. But the one thing about me is that I don't give up very easily, and I'm quite determined. And I know that good things can come from terrible things. And even just the last year has proven that to me, that you can literally go through hell and back and survive it and thrive off of that. So I'm just swimming along, I'm just wading through. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. Other times I am like a dolphin through the water. But today is a particular day where I've had therapy and I feel raw. I was thinking before this podcast, like, do I want to pretend, or do I want to just give the performance side of Grace and the survivor side, or do I just want to be honest about the reality of some of my days? And I decided to just be honest.
Thank you, Grace.
You're welcome.
No, I really mean it. And I feel like whenever we meet, we have lovely conversations. And one thing that I really appreciate about you is how raw you are, and how real you are, and how honest you are, and how much you share, and that is both, that's a positive for me in this conversation. But I can imagine, as someone who does a lot of content creation as well, that can be tough for you to share, and you must want to sometimes kind of go into a bit of a cocoon. You said to me that you're going on holiday next week, which I'm so thrilled for you. But you able to take back more time now, and more, perhaps not time after what we've spoken about, but are you putting in different boundaries?
Yeah. So I think I've become a lot better at sharing just enough and sharing in an appropriate way. So, for example, this podcast and Happiful magazine is the space that I share a lot of my big, deep stuff. I don't know why it feels safer to do it that way, but I just do. And a lot of my articles are things that I mention on social media, but not in great detail. And I've definitely noticed that I feel more centered when I share just enough online, because there's definitely a misconception that you have to share your trauma every day and have this story to be worthy of the success that you get or the money that you get. And going through COVID and my coma and stuff, I realized that actually I can just share what I want to share, and the joy and the lightheartedness. And of course, like, there is substance and there's a place for that. And I'm really passionate about taboo subjects and speaking about things that actually matter. But at the same time, like, the internet isn't my friend. Like, I tell my friends the things that need to be said, and my family and my therapist. And my team now are incredible, and they help manage my online conversations and what I will say and won't say. And there's some things I just won't talk about, such as Cyprus's NICU stay. I mentioned like my coma and my hospital admission, but he was in there for like 2 or 3 weeks. But I don't go into detail about that because it's not my story to say, it's his when he's older. I just want to protect him as much as possible. So that part of the journey and that part of our story is very much like under locks, and that's how I want to keep it. I think I'm good at, sharing pieces of our lives, my partner and Cyprus's, that keeps people interested, but doesn't overstep anyone's boundaries. I'm quite proud of myself for that, because there comes a time when you've been doing what I've been doing for so long where you do want to retreat. And even like days where I just feel like shit, I won't go online, I won't post, I won't share, because I have to protect myself and my own well-being. And I preach so much about like boundaries and protecting your peace and all that kind of stuff. It'd be really odd if I didn't do any of that. But it's also a learning journey still. I'm still learning about my own boundaries and the perimeters that I've set up for myself and others.
And no one's been through what you've been through before. Going back to, you were talking about being an OG on YouTube.
Yeah.
You've kind of come all the way from the beginning. No one's done what you've done before, and no one's been through your personal experience, but also generally, the world experienced COVID for the first time. So you are still finding your way, plus motherhood, plus all of those things. So it's absolutely right that you are putting in those boundaries, and I salute you for it, because it must be so tough. Everyone's been so invested in you. It must be so tough, but you're doing an amazing job, and you share just a little bit of your life with Lee and Cyprus on the Familyhood, which is beautiful. Does that bring you joy?
Thank you. It does. And we kind of post sporadically. There's no set routine, and that's intentional, because I hate the feeling of having to force something to happen. Instagram and Twitter come naturally to me. I can post, I tweet, I'm on the go, it's easy. YouTube is more curated in terms of having to film, edit, upload. It takes a while, and I haven't got the time or the brain space. So we don't post as often as I think we probably should. But at the same time, I'm kind of honouring the time frame that we have, the lifestyle that we lead. And the content is still authentic. It's just not, 3 times a week, which for me is just way too much. And, we share Cyprus's like meal times and us going on little staycations and like little fun things that we do as a family. I'm quite strict on not sharing Cyprus crying or having a meltdown, or I don't know, him in the bath, etc. There's just certain things that I won't share, and I feel happy with that decision.
And intentional was a word that you used a moment ago, and it's something I've noticed has come up in a lot of your writing for us, and generally that idea of being intentional about things, whether it's around Cyprus's mealtime and putting on music so it's relaxed, or whether it's about you switching off and taking self-care time and really doing that and being intentional. And you also talked about spirituality at the beginning and faith. Are you able to make time to explore that for yourself? Because whenever we've talked, it's always been something that's been in the conversation.
Yeah. So I remember seeing a quote at the end of last year, and it said, "Be where your feet are." I took that with me as in, like be present, and like if you're with your baby, be with your baby. If you're working, work. If you're in the bath, be in the bath. So I try and kind of implement that every day. It doesn't always go to plan, but I do try.
Because you're human.
Yeah. And spiritually, oh my God, spiritually, I describe where I'm at as I'm in spiritual warfare, because I feel like it's not that I don't have time, because I do have time to, be with myself, to meditate. I make sure that I always have my evenings free. So when Cypress is in bed, I have 2 or 3 hours where I can do what I want. But there's something stopping me from connecting to my spiritual self. I think it's because of what's happened, kind of this fragmented identity issues that I'm experiencing, a whole heap of problems and issues are coming up. So spiritually, I am very confused. And I don't think people talk about this enough, where you've already had your awakening, you're already on your path, you're filling up your cup, you're connected, you're grounded, you're at one with nature. I've done that, I've been there. And now nothing feels like it's serving me, During my coma, I had really, really intense, dark, traumatic dreams. But there was a part of my dream where I saw a spiritual figure. And to me, he was godlike. And he said, "You can't die. I'm going to fill you with my energy and my green light, and you're going to go back." So I woke up knowing that there are things out there you can't explain unless you've experienced it for yourself. I died and came back. All these things that happened to me were miraculous. I'm told time and time again, I'm a miracle. But now that I'm actually in the world and I'm living and I'm recovered and I'm trying to find who I am again, it's not as simple as you're a miracle and these things exist, and there's these dimensions and there's your spiritual guides and your ancestors. It's not as simple as that. You've got to really believe it for yourself and in your soul. And for me, I'm still figuring that out now. I don't know what I believe in anymore. I believe in God and I believe in a higher power and love and manifestation, energy, all that kind of stuff. I believe in all of it still, but I don't know how to practice and have rituals that are for me, the new me that's now. And it will come eventually, I'm hoping that when I go on holiday and I'm in water, I'm going to feel something, even if it's like rage and sadness. But I just want to be able to like connect, because when you go through a really big thing like I went through, you do feel angry and you feel like you are full of resentment. And you don't want to be connected to other people because you're so displaced from who you are. So I think the next part of my journey will be connecting again to, nature, to whatever I think, will serve me best.
Sounds like you've got a real yearning to go and be in water and just have some kind of moment. Tell us about that. Tell me why it's important for you to go. And I mean, you've just talked about having that kind of feeling, allowing yourself to have that feeling. But is there something specifically about water that's drawing you right now?
Yeah. So I've always loved water and been a water baby, and I love being on the beach. And there's something about the beach being so vast and so big that makes you feel so small, and I love it. But when I was in hospital, I visualized walking hand in hand with my partner and with Cypress into the water. And that was the one thing I would think about to get me through like that next hour, the next day, the next month. And it kept me going. And it's been so long, I think, for everyone to go away and see the world. And I think when you're in water, I feel like I physically feel my energy like melt away, and the water just carries you. And oh my goodness, I can't wait. And like the sun on my skin, yeah, I think I might cry. I think I might actually walk into the sea and cry, because yeah, it's just a beautiful place, isn't it, to be?
It is. And do you know what? That sounds like the perfect thing to do. And it's going to be a moment for you, and a moment that you deserve as well after all of this. And I have so many questions to ask you, but I'm going to finish today's podcast because actually that is such a beautiful thought of you going to the beach. And I know you and I are going to have loads more opportunities to talk.
Yes.
Loads more time in the future. From Happiful, we wanted to have a check-in with you and speak to you and see how you're doing and share that with all your readers. And before we go, is there anything you would like to say?
I think today and doing this podcast when I just feel so raw is like just reminding me of the power of vulnerability, and that like as humans you're not happy all the time, you're not always 100%, and that's okay. And you haven't got to run and hide every time you feel exposed or you feel naked. So I just think it's a really beautiful point to make, that it's actually powerful to not have your shit together all the time.
I agree. Grace Victory, we love you very much. Have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you.